Fawn
and Matt. We're an interracial couple with 2 kids wanting to do something that highlights the power of friendship and what it means to be in the company of true friends. We're going to move our society away and out of the loneliness epidemic and into a friendlier, happier world. Welcome to our friendly world. Better, stronger, together.
Welcome back to our friendly world, everybody.
Hello, how is everyone?
Okay. So once again, to emphasize again, the reason for this podcast came years ago when Matt and I got together and decided to do something about what's going on with friendship in our society. But really years before that, when I was very little, when I was a small child, I started noticing things because I'm an immigrant. Technically, my family moved here before I was born. They went back and forth. They were trying to figure things out. So I was raised in 2 cultures completely, whereas my siblings and, my family, they never quite adjusted. I adjusted more to the United States, I think, than they did. But I always paid attention to how people were speaking to one another, how the people from my background were speaking to one another, how my friends at school in the United States, how they were raised, how they were being spoken to, how they spoke to each other. And I was telling a friend of mine, I went on her podcast and I was telling her about how my photography career started was because I would sneak into my mother's closet, and deep in there was this old photo album. And if you're familiar with like photo albums from other countries, like Iran in particular, it has rice paper, it has black paper. The cover is made out of this wood and it's thick and it has these elaborate Persian, like not just a painting, it's like you can feel, it's very tactile. Like you can put your hands on it and feel all of the brushstrokes and the dots of paint, the peacocks and the flowers, very elaborate Persian painting. Anyway, I would look at these and they were pictures of family from many years ago or generations ago. And you got to understand that back then it was a privilege. It was something to have your photograph taken, to have a portrait made of you. Photographic portrait also, like it was a big deal. And also you had to sit straight, you had to sit still for a while because it wasn't like the photograph could be taken in a fraction of a second. And also because it was so, it was just a big deal. Okay. So you had to sit there, and I think that they understood that in this one moment, in this fraction of a moment, everything about you is being presented to the world. Everything about you. So I think they gathered all their emotions, everything that they were about, and looked right into the camera. And I fell in love with that. And not only did I fall in love with the style of portraiture, because there was so much reverence in it that I noticed even as a little kid, but also it was a way for me to connect to these people that I didn't know that somehow my parents came from. Trying to understand, why are these people, meaning my parents,
right,
behaving this way?
Oh dear.
No, because from a very early age, there was a lot of turmoil.
Well, yeah.
And I would sit there. I remember, I have memories of being in my diapers, not knowing how to walk, scanning the room and understanding what people were saying, the consequences of what they were saying, and feeling all kinds of emotions. One of them, besides fear, was compassion and pity. Like, whoa. And I told myself, in a way, like the feeling I could describe was, don't act like that. Like, what they're doing is wrong. Don't act like that.
Ouch.
What?
Well, I mean, that's how they felt. That's how they were.
If they're being mean and using bad language and it's not, they were saying things that were not nice.
About who?
About each other.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
And sometimes it was targeted at me,
Okay.
So I knew, okay, but I could also see the pain, and I could see how this person did this to this person. And so I could say A did some messed up stuff to B. And then B goes and does the same messed up stuff to someone else. And I could see the pattern. I could see, wow, this happened to them. Now they're going to do it to someone else. And I told myself, and I remember looking down, I was in diapers. And I always got lots of messages, by the way, like when I was that age, like some really freaky metaphysical messages. But one of them was, I'm not going to do that. It's going to stop here with me. I'm not going to do that. Anyway, so I would turn to these photos and I would understand. And maybe it was, what's the word for it? When you want someone to tell you something. So it could be that, or it could be I actually was communicating with these ancestors, but I could feel them parenting me a little bit. Like I could feel them with their pain in their eyes or their compassion in their eyes or whatever it was. I could feel an embrace. Like, I'm sorry that these kids are behaving this way, meaning their kids or their grandkids. Does this make any sense to you?
In a way.
What do you mean in a way? You don't understand what I'm trying to say?
No, I understand what you're trying to say. I'm just questioning where we're going.
Well, I was going to say that I noticed from an early age what our society is going through. I noticed, yes, there are changes in life and it's really hard to adapt. It's really hard to roll with the punches. It's really hard to roll with the change that's happening. It is hard when you don't feel accepted. It is hard when you have group A trying to turn you against group B. I just noticed it in all kinds of ways. And I'm trying to get back to why, again, restating the reason why we have this podcast, why we're concentrating on the friendship movement, on the art of friendship. It is not just friendship. It is our relationships to everything, to ourselves, everything. And we decided to work on friendship because, go and listen to the first few episodes of our podcast over 4 years ago. But I don't want to keep repeating myself. But one of the things that I always said, Matt, was one of the things in the beginning that I was always saying was, I think I'm going to sound like a conspiracy theorist regarding friendship, because I felt like just looking at things since I was a kid, I felt like there was this force that prevented people from having good relationships with one another. I felt like there were things at play that's not quite visible that keeps us from being together. And it shows up in different ways. It shows up as the 4-letter word, busy. It shows up as always feeling like you're fighting a fire or you're running away. It shows up as fight or flight. You're always in survival mode. You don't have any energy or time to really have proper relationships, not only with yourself, enjoying your own life, but then having that energy, having the capacity to offer something to someone else or be there for someone else or create, period. Create art, create a life, create a beautiful home, There's no time. And I thought there was something insidious about it. And at the risk of sounding like this conspiracy theorist, that's always been at the back of my head. So I'm thinking this, and I've been thinking about it a lot more lately because of all of the things that have been going on that are going on right now. I think someone said more than ever in history, there's been more elections happening this year around the world than ever before. Governments are changing at a rapid scale. Like a lot more elections are happening.
But
a lot
isn't
more
that
changes.
A good thing? More elections?
Yeah. Yes, but it just feels like it's not just a normal election for many people. There's a lot of fighting, a lot of distrust, a lot of people feeling scared, a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right?
Right.
And
That is true.
And so as we're recording this, we're very, very close to our election. And I know in my heart, no matter which way it goes, that there's going to be a lot of turmoil.
Right.
Probably. As I was thinking about this, a book was brought to my attention last week. Now, this book is highly controversial, but it was really interesting what it said. And what was in this book, and this is why I'm bringing up what I just brought up, what was in this book is the insidiousness that I have been feeling all of my life, that has been keeping us from having friendships, that's been keeping us from having community. The way this guy puts things together, the book is called Rules for Radicals, and it's written by Saul Alinsky in 1971. Again, Rules for Radicals. I'm just going to give you the basic notes on how you can bring down a system. And let me know, what do you think? Don't you think this is a little bit familiar? No matter what side of politics you're on, see if this is familiar to you. So there are tactics, and I'll point them out. This guy pointed them out. There's like 13 ways. There are 13 things to do to break a system, to break it apart, make it stop working, period. And once again, if you look, no matter what side of politics you're on, both sides have been doing this. Check this out. And I think as long as we become aware of it, then we can see each other in a better light. Don't you think, Matt? Once you see what's going on.
I was creeped out the entire time I was reading this book.
Well, I've been creeped out my whole life. So
okay, fair.
Join the
fair
club.
Is fair.
All right. So here's the 13. I'm just going to read the 13 and I will also describe a little bit. Okay. Number 1, power is not only what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have.
Perception dictates reality.
Right. The perception of power can be just as important as actual power. Make opponents believe that you are stronger and more capable than you might really be. Does that sound familiar? I mean, it happens at work, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And also just the whole concept of you're throwing away your vote, or, there's no point in voting, and all the rest of it if you want to, start focusing in on recent political events.
This group doesn't have enough power, or let me just, I'm always trying to be general because I don't want to piss anyone off and I don't want to get in trouble. But I'll just say, like women, okay, we've lost so much in the United States. Women's rights have been totally stripped.
And you're just describing that women today have fewer options, fewer choices than they had 4 years ago.
Right. And we're back to where we were in the 1800s. And so, yeah, that is true. But I also feel even more disempowered having that message constantly be thrown at me. It doesn't make me feel good. I can go about my day and feel powerful and control my life. But then if I'm constantly hearing this message, even though I'm doing whatever I can to bring forth equality, that constant message, though, telling me that I'm disempowered, it's not good. What do you think?
You're absolutely right. And in addition, the fact that as a society, we are more broken down into individuals than we ever have been before. We don't gather in groups. Can you imagine if every Sunday you went with your group, whatever that group is, be it a book club or a religious group or even just a group of like-minded, strong women, for instance, would help you reinforce where your power lies. But the fact that you're isolated means you're almost subjugated to the whims of whatever comes down.
And this is why we have this podcast, because we're taking a look at how we are so isolated. But we're not just saying, hey, we're isolated. What we're doing on this podcast is actually giving tools. It may not seem like it per episode, but if you have been in it with us, you realize, hopefully, that we're actually discussing these things and coming up with solutions. Or even if we can't come up with a solution, just the mere fact of speaking about it and talking about our emotions about it changes things for the better. It brings light to the situation. Anyway, we can talk about every single one of these 13 tactics forever. I'm just going to go to number 2. Never go outside the expertise of your people. Stick to tactics. I can't say that word. Stick to tactics. Stick to tactics that your group can execute effectively. Operating outside of your group skill set can lead to confusion, mistakes, and loss of morale.
Which ties into a later one for sure. But yeah, let's keep it simple, silly. If your group is all engineers, then speak in engineering terms. If your group is all, warehouse workers, which I have been, speak in those terms. Know your audience.
It also, going back to relationships, it reminds me of family. They don't like anything from another culture. They feel so uncomfortable if someone is speaking a different language. Or like if we ever talk about other countries, they get so offended immediately.
Right.
About how great the United States is and what are you even doing talking about another country?
Unless it's been pre-sanitized and we have no idea that like coffee came from Ethiopia or, hummus was not invented by an American company.
But again, about the American culture, how come we don't learn 3 languages at the same time when we're in preschool like other countries do? Come on. What's the point? Like what is the harm? People get so offended here.
Anyways.
All right, number 3. Whenever possible, go outside the expertise of the enemy. Push your opponent into unfamiliar territory where they are uncomfortable and vulnerable. This will cause them to react poorly or make mistakes. Isn't that what we just said? This is why they don't like to go out for outside expertise, right?
Right.
Because they consider it a weakness rather than just learning. But then here it says, if you throw them the unfamiliar, that it will basically have them react in a negative way. So something that is not something that they're used to.
People like what they like, and they, it comes from the ancient Greeks, xenophobia. I mean, they had a whole term for fear of the foreign.
But again, like all these can be used to understand why we're not together. Number 4, make the enemy live up to its own book of rules. Hold your opponent. Again, remember, these tactics are here to break down society, right? So make the enemy live up to its own book of rules. Hold your opponent accountable to the standards they profess to follow. This exposes hypocrisy and forces them into difficult situations. Okay, I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but I often think about politicians. When we were growing up, how many men in office did you hear proclaim how awful it was to be homosexual? And then all of a sudden they would be having sex with a minor boy in a bathroom. Do you remember? There were so many
I didn't
times.
want to go there. I just wanted to talk about Mahatma Gandhi's passive resistance, for goodness sake. Do we have to go there? Can't we just say Gandhi shamed the British people into freeing India? Has a nicer ring, doesn't it?
I don't know what that has to do with the hypocrisy.
Well,
look, I'm just thinking about politics.
He shamed, and this is politics on the grand scale. He shamed the British Empire into freeing India.
You can't shame people anymore these days. That doesn't work anymore.
Understand your playing field. Again, earlier rules, okay? Now, all of the rules and all of the examples inside of this book, you can't use anymore because everybody knows them, and this was 50. This was 50 years ago.
Yeah, but Matt, this is still being played out.
No. And the rules certainly are, but the examples you can't use.
Right. Well, I can still use those examples. Anytime I hear either politician say something that is, they're such hypocrites. I can see both sides doing that.
Yes, but there was a Canadian somebody who was literally photographed in college in blackface who is still in power.
Justin Trudeau.
Okay, so people find excuses for historical events, even well-documented ones. So again, you have to be careful.
I don't want to get into an argument, and I don't want to be careful. I'm just telling you my feelings. Does that not, do you understand?
I do completely.
This is what I'm feeling, and I'm sorry I don't have a PhD, but I can tell you I've been noticing this my entire life, okay? And I'm giving big examples that piss people off. For example, the politicians.
Can I tap now?
Okay, Matt's tapping. Fine, okay. Number 5. Are we on number 5?
I think so.
Number 5. Ridicule is man's most potent weapon. Humor and ridicule are powerful because they are difficult to counter and make the opponent appear foolish or weak. It also energizes supporters. I mean, again, American politics. Look at all the ways that one opponent is constantly made fun of for makeup, for hair, for body image. And then the other side, ridiculed for, I don't know, I'm going to go back, but a female politician being ridiculed for wearing suits or not looking the way they want a female to look, or the laugh that they may have. Everyone ridicules to. We were talking about this last week, weren't we? How comedians make us feel better because you're making fun of what is terrifying you and you feel less alone and more empowered. This is happening everywhere. Like everyone is using these tactics, not just one political party. All of them are. Should I go on to the next one?
Ridicule is hard too because it's like the smart money is always on ignoring it, but yet the not smart money is on ignoring it. So it's like, even if it's completely ludicrous, the accusation or the statement that's made to ridicule you, it's almost like addressing it is worse, but not addressing it is still, never mind.
It's kind of like ignoring the person. And it's also, remember years ago how when people wanted to speak about a whole culture and like just randomly describe a whole entire culture, they would describe them as crazy.
Yes.
Because they didn't understand
their motivations.
Or yes, they were very, very bad people, but then the whole culture was placed into that realm with these bad people. And anyone from there was crazy.
Right, because crazy is easy.
You can dismiss it.
Foreign, again... welcome to,
but,
let's start taking a look back up the rules, right?
Even if it's not foreign, it's too painful to look at, so we're just going to label it with this one thing so we can throw it in the trash.
Well, I don't have 3 weeks to understand the geopolitical manifestations of, well, guess what? You should probably maybe take some of that time, those 3 weeks, as opposed to throwing down a single word in summary.
It makes me think of the Black Swan guy, the guy who his whole living was negotiating the release of hostages. That's his job. Mm-hmm. And what he was saying is you have to connect with the other person and hear them. He's talking about the enemy.
Right.
You have to develop a sense of bonding with them. It came down to them being heard. And, I can't say this for... Never mind. This is a really touchy subject.
This is a very touchy subject, but there's so much history out there that is blissfully ignored, from, oh my goodness, pogroms in Eastern European nations to how many people even know about the Islamic Caliphate, or that Spain was once upon a time, at least the southern part of it, embraced Islam. I mean, for goodness sake. And what's the difference? Why do Pakistanis and Indians have a natural antagonism towards each other?
Right. And all this needs to be seen, studied, and understood.
There's a lot of context.
But I'm also not trying to put this together with evil. Okay, I'm not talking about evil. The terrorism. Okay, this is something different that I'm talking about, that we're talking about. So we're not making excuses for evil here. Totally different. Okay, let's just go to the next one because there's 13. Number 6. A good tactic is one your people enjoy. The best tactics are those that keep your supporters engaged and motivated. If your group is having fun, they will be more likely to stay involved and committed.
And ridicule certainly focuses in on that. Right. If you can get everybody, wearing goofy T-shirts that make fun of somebody or whatever.
Until number 7, a tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag. Don't let a tactic become stale. Constantly evolve your strategies to maintain momentum and interest among your supporters. Yeah, after a while, you stop hearing the thing you always hear.
Right.
It is embedded in your spirit, though. So we need to be careful, much like subliminal language,
Mm-hmm.
Number 8, keep the pressure on. Never let up. Apply continuous pressure to the opposition to keep them off balance and force them to respond. Sustained pressure can wear down their defenses. I mean, we learned this in martial arts.
Yes.
I mean, I did. Did Aikido do that?
Well, it was about
If you keep
walking
punching,
down the
punching,
path
punching.
that you want to walk down. So it's acknowledging that somebody will try this. Yes.
And like a Muhammad Ali, you're constantly running around them. They don't have the stamina to keep going.
Particularly when you keep approaching them in new ways that ridicule them and that your people find interesting, engaging, and fun.
Here's number 9, which is really like one of the things that's happening now. Here it is. Number 9. The threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. The fear of what might happen can often be more effective than actually carrying out the action. This plays into people's anxieties, making them more likely to compromise or retreat.
And that's what's happened the whole way through. Now, in the book, he's very much kind of centering in, because he spent an interesting amount of time like motivating and inspiring and creating these tactics. But a lot of the fear was, oh no, it's black people. Seriously.
Well,
and he used that threat carefully without forcing the other person to say, oh my goodness, I'm racist because this makes me uncomfortable, in order to get things to happen, like black people into management training programs at department stores of all places, segregating, getting better schooling, getting infant care, getting a lot of good stuff across these racial lines.
Wait, so what are you saying? So was he fighting for the black people?
He was.
Okay.
He was. But the threat was, black people will ... which is an interesting kind of narrow line to run. But this was 1971.
I'm afraid to say what I'm about to say.
Uh-oh.
But gun control is out of control in the United States. I feel like if there was a campaign for people of color to really have guns, then there would be rules against having guns.
And there you go. It's the implied threat.
Okay. Moving on. Are we on number 10? Yeah. Number 10. The major premise for tactics is the development of operations that will maintain a constant pressure upon the opposition.
So we're back to pressure.
Wait, what is that? The major premise for tactics is the development of operations that will maintain a constant pressure upon the opposition. Plan and execute operations that keep your opponent under constant strain, forcing them to respond to your agenda rather than setting their own. I mean, perfect example of friendship, our relationships, our families. You're constantly under the strain of something else that you don't even have time to focus on your own well-being. Taking care of your home, taking care of your family. Immediately, if we have children, they're put into daycare. Immediately, if a person reaches a certain age and develops certain, physical problems, immediately they're put into a home. It's separating. Why? Because we can't take care of each other.
Right. And then we end up spending time chasing random dopamine hits too, which is a fun thing, which drags us completely off the subject. But even when we have a spare moment, we can get a sharp dopamine hit in like 5 minutes if we go looking for it out there on the interwebs.
Which is changing our behaviors and our minds,
Yes.
The internet.
Yes.
So that's a dangerous place to go.
It is.
Okay, number 11. If you push a negative hard enough and deep enough, it will break through into its counterside. So every negative action or issue has the potential to be flipped into something positive for your cause. Persist in highlighting problems until the opposition is forced into a defensive or contradictory position. There are negatives being displayed all over the place.
Yeah, there are. But the key is that you understand the morality of your opponent, and then figure out how the morality of your opponent, which is everyone should have a wonderful education. Well, guess what? These schools are shite. I'm on the defensive, I'm on the back foot, and I can no longer act in a moral fashion which is intolerable, perhaps, to the group that you're targeting. That's where it all gets fun. And when you call them out on it, as opposed to just letting things be, and you constantly put pressure on them, you can affect change, is what he's saying.
Number
12?
12. Number 12. The price of a successful attack is a constructive alternative. You must offer solutions in addition to criticism. After attacking a problem, be ready to present a feasible and appealing alternative that your audience can rally behind.
And this is the sticking part. This is the big one. This is the big kind of issue. I remember I used to love arguing. Hey, I still do. But one time somebody challenged me and said, okay, fine, what would you do about it? I was just tearing something down.
So instead of complaining, can you come up with a solution?
Right. Doesn't matter what it is, which is why now I think whenever I look at a problem, I try and see what a solution might be.
Right.
Even if it's horrific, the fact that I could come up with a solution means there must be another one out there somewhere. If I can't come up with any solution, then maybe I just need to shut up or do some more research before I start getting myself involved. A perfect example was when I was at university, we had a rally. Stop animal testing. There was animal testing happening on campus. Stop animal testing. I heard about this afterwards. I did not participate, probably because I didn't know, but I'm not sure. Anyways, somebody from inside came out and said, okay, how about if we, one, have a state board that oversees all testing and makes sure that it's humane and safe. B, forced to publish all our stuff, forced to publish all our research as well as all the negative and or positive consequences thereof, and something else. And the audience was like, woohoo, big victory for us. Well, they were already doing all of those things. Protest over. Because you can't just stand there and protest. You have to have an agenda. You have to have a path forward, a positive path forward.
Yeah, and that comes from not thinking things through.
Not
looking into the future.
Right.
Okay, 13. Pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. Ouch. Focus your attention on a specific individual or entity. Here, okay, this is the gold one right now for me. Okay, especially with what's happening with this generation. Okay, let me repeat. Number 13. Pick the target, freeze it, polarize it. Pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. I'm going to take that back. It's not just this generation. Every few years, have you noticed, Matt? There's a particular target. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be the target, but there's focus on something and then it suddenly disappears pretty much overnight. For example, I heard Greg Braden bring this up too when he was talking about this. What happened to Occupy Wall Street? Didn't it seem like, poof, they disappeared?
Right.
Anyway, we'll talk about that in a second. Let me just read this. So number 13, pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. Focus your attention on a specific individual or entity. By personalizing the conflict and making it about a clear enemy, you create a symbol for your cause and simplify the issue. Polarization sharpens the lines of conflict, making it easier to mobilize supporters. Should I read that again? By personalizing the conflict and making it about a clear enemy, you create a symbol for your cause and simplify the issue. Polarization sharpens the lens of conflict, making it easier to mobilize supporters. If you think about it, going back to Occupy Wall Street, yes, it was the same time that you and I were having major financial problems. And yeah, so were a lot of other people. It was around the time that people were losing their homes. Everything was crashing. Remember?
Right.
When Elle was born, we were at the hospital and we were both she was in NICU. I was having problems We were having problems with the doctors in the hospital, totally mistreated by these people. And so we were there for a long time, and the TV was on. We had no contact with the outside world. It was just us. We were stuck at the hospital fighting for our lives, and the TV was on. And it was like Armageddon out there. Remember? Financial Armageddon. Everything was crashing.
Right.
And I didn't care because we were fighting for our lives, but like I was looking at it and I'm like, I wasn't even attached to it, but I could see people were freaking out. The dollar hit an all-time low or something.
Something like that.
Things were crashing.
Mm-hmm.
The financial structure was crumbling. And, and it was shortly after that, Occupy Wall Street was really out there. And it was pitting the poor against the rich. And anyone who was having any kind of financial conflict was seen as the victim, correct?
Right.
And so, yeah, we were going through it. So, your feeling is to go, yeah, these people are stealing from us. It was pitting one group against the other. And it was charged, boy. Wasn't it charged?
It was.
I mean, yeah. All the rage I felt at the hospital, the way we were treated, all the rage I felt financially, the injustice of the healthcare system, and all the money we had to pay based on major mistakes the hospital made that wiped out our funds that we had to pay for years. The house that suddenly lost all its value, getting unemployed, having babies to take care of. I mean, yeah, the rage was there for me.
Right.
For you too.
But in point of fact, Occupy Wall Street never adjusted their tactics, never went through ridicule as far as I could tell, and didn't really, they personalized but didn't personalize. It wasn't centered on an entity, a person. The trick is
the trick is.
I'm sorry, not trick. To say trick almost sounds like you trivialize it, but kind of the central message is you find that person. When Roger and Me, that guy who did Roger and Me, he personalized it to
Michael
the president of General Motors, wasn't it? When we had the election and there was a gentleman who was on furlough. There was a convicted felon on furlough who ended up killing somebody. That was the one key issue of that presidential election.
You're looking at the whole picture. I'm just looking at how this was playing out, how this has been playing out the whole time we've been alive. Is every few years there is a movement to pit one group against the other. And you think, okay, well, that was against the poor against the rich. Fine. Yeah, but then as soon as that disappeared, there was another one. There's always been something. Man against women. Women against men. Parents against children. This religion against this religion. This culture against this culture. Black against white. There's always something that is pitting us apart. And eventually, every single group gets affected. Eventually, you are one of those people that's being pitted against the other.
Right.
Eventually, we're all in it fighting, because meticulously every year or every few years, haven't you noticed that there's something that's involved in a fight? And right now, I think it's gender issues.
Certainly in America, but there's an awful lot.
No, it's all around the world.
But there's an awful lot going on in Israel, Ukraine, North Korea.
Anyway, I'm just saying they've got us all at this point. This has been playing out for so long. So the four major ones to me are: make the enemy live up to their own book of rules. Ridicule is the most potent weapon. Keeping the pressure on, picking the target, freezing it, personalizing it, and polarizing it. Basically pitting us against each other. I know this was a lot, but especially in terms of relationships, in terms of community, think about all of this. And I think if we realize what's happening, It can clear up the veil. It can lift up the tarp that's been put over our heads where we can't see straight. I think as long as we become aware of this, we could have better relationships. What do you think, Matt?
I think you're absolutely right. And I also wanted to throw down a quote from the book because, yeah, the book certainly is very heady. It's very uncomfortable. It made me feel dirty reading it. But and of course, the guy who wrote the book ended up dying like a year after he wrote the book. So God knows what he would have written later and how he would have contemplated it later. But one of the things he does say, one of the quotes from the book that I kind of want to end the show on myself is, a major revolution to be won in the immediate future is the dissipation of man's illusion that his own welfare can be separate from that of all others. As long as man is shackled to this myth, so long will the human spirit languish. Concern for our private material well-being with disregard for the well-being of others is immoral according to the precepts of our Judeo-Christian civilization, but worse, it is stupidity worthy of the lower animals.
Perfect.
Okay. I guess that's the show then. So, wow, thank you so much for going on this journey with us.
Woo! Have a beautiful every day.
Yay!
No, we can't leave you
Love
like that.
Love is winning.
Love is winning, y'all. Everybody, love is winning. Okay. Don't worry. Don't worry.
But be aware of of the things happening around you.
Love is winning. If you need us, reach out. Take care. Everything's going to be okay.
Be well.